This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa Linear BR Reels.
Welcome to the second part of the Thinking Tackle Guide to Holiday Carp Fishing. We're at Maison de lac Bleu in central France, a place that we've been to many times before that we absolutely love. And what a way to start the show off. Let's peel this back and show you what has just graced my landing net. I'm in. Right. I'm in. I'm attached to a great big carp. I'm fishing Pirouet Lake, which is basically the carp fishing version of Jurassic Park. They're just freaks of nature, the fish in these lakes. A fish got caught a couple of years ago at 54 pounds that we knew was only 7 years old. Just absolutely ridiculous. And what we're going to concentrate on this show is small water tactics. This is only about 10 or 12 acres. And the fish are very pressured. There's anglers on here from the beginning of April right through up until the start of November, and these fish know all about rigs, they know all about baits. Well, this one looks like a baby, but which for an ear is probably about 35 pound. I don't know though, no, maybe he's a little bit bigger than that. Oh, look at that, a Leviathan. Come on, my love. In you come. It's a scaly one as well. Come on. Come on. Hit the cord. Yes, got him. Come on. Excellent, absolutely top result. That is a very, very big mirror carp. Well, that is an absolutely stunning carp. It is fat as you like, and almost certainly 50 pound. And I've got another one bigger than that, languishing in the sling at the moment, and I've still got 3 rods fishing as well. So we're going to show you these beauties, and then get off some technical stuff. We're going to do location, why I'm putting the baits where I'm putting them, what baits I'm using. The bait I've caught this fish on, I started using when I was about 13, 14, 25 years ago. It's what I caught my first carp on, and I've started using them again to very, very good effect. So let's get this fella out and show you how big he is. Oh, God! Oh. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the scales are zeroed, so whatever she goes, she goes. Do you want to read it, Hamid? I'll lift it, you read it.
£50 too.
Get in! Come on! Right, let's show you this beauty. Look at this. Chill, baby. Oh, £50, 2 ounces. And there's a bigger one still to show you. Oh. Chill, baby. Look at that detailing on his head, all those little, tiny little lines. Wicked. What a morning's angling. And we're going to show you all the stuff we caught him on, especially the new secret bait, if you're very lucky. Right, we're going to put this fella back and show you the bigger one, because there's one bigger than this. Oh, what a beast. Oh, look at that. What a beast. Thank you, my love. Off you go. Tell your mum. Enormodon. Right, let's show you one bigger. Right, well, before we were interrupted by that fantastic 50-pounder, I was just about to show you this fella that I had just as it was getting light. How about this for a beast? Come here, baby. They are doing this, just roll them back onto your forearms, just let them flick backwards and forwards, keep them nice and low. Eventually he'll calm down and then I'll be able to hoist him up. All right, baby. There we go. Chill. Ooh. 57 pounds and 2 ounces. Look at that. What a morning's angling. Now, we're obviously going to show you all the tips and techniques for approaching these very pressured waters with very, very big fish, including rigs, bait, hiding the line, all the tackle you need, the things not to spend your money on and the things to spend your money on. Remember that all-important secret bait. And it's not just coming from me. You're going to get Ali Hamidi, Tom Dove and some of the others who have also been catching on the other lakes to show you what they're doing as well. Oh, what a beast. God, that's heavy. We're going to talk location now after those two fantastic fish this morning, and the first thing to bear in mind when you're choosing to swim is how much water you've got in front of you and how many different options there are, because a week's a long time, so you want to have a few different spots that you can put baits. And this is the perfect swim. The point on Pirouet is absolutely fantastic because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 islands out in front of me, and there's areas here where no one else can cast into, which is really good. When there's commotion around the lake, hopefully it's going to push the fish into the centre and then I'm going to pick them off. So my first 2 rods have gone long out towards those islands in the distance there. I've had a good cast round with a marker float, and I've found that off them islands there's a gravelly slope and then it goes to soft sand, which is ever so slightly deeper, and then back up onto the gravel. And because of the time of year, I'm fishing the deepest water I can. Out there it's about 6 foot. You imagine those great big fish moving around in 2-3 feet of water, they may not be very comfortable, so fishing the deeper water will definitely pick up the bigger fish. And then I've put another baited spot out there, much closer on this left-hand island, just off the corner of that. I'm not going into Ben's water on the other side, but if you've got 2 baited spots in your swim, then sometimes you can bounce the fish between them. So you get a bite off of one rod, the fish move across, you get a bite off the close rod, and then they move back again. If all your eggs are in one basket in one of these swims, you can scare the fish away by getting a bite, and they don't come back for a while. So having 2 baited spots is a definite advantage. I've had a real good cast around with both the markers on the short and long rods to map the swim out at the start, because a week's a long time. You know, don't worry about disturbing the swim to start off with, unless of course there are loads of fish crashing out, and then I'll probably just put PVA bags out. But there weren't when I got here, so I had a good cast round. I know what's out there. I'm not going to use the marker now for the rest of that week's session. All my lines are all clipped up and everything. I'm going to keep dropping it back in the same spot. Now, coming back from breakfast, the thing a lot of people do wrong is they'll cast all their rods out straight away and probably scare any fish that are still feeding on the bait you put out last night. night. So what I'm going to do is put a few spodfuls of bait out, because I believe it's better to scare the fish with bait than it is with a rig. So before I do that, just to talk you through the spod, because this has been updated recently, the front fins have come off of it. That stops it wandering left and right if you've got a crosswind, and there's these new stiff tails on the back of it that get it out of the water really, really quickly, so it comes in even easier. So I'm just going to, it's already clipped up, I'm just going to drop 4 out, 2 on each of the rods, the long rods, and then a couple on the close one. And the last rod I'm fishing, I'm casting in between the gap in the right hand islands, because I've seen fish showing there. There's no bait around that at all, and I'll see if I can pick up an extra fish on that one. So I'm going to get a little bit of bait out and hopefully just get those fish to waddle off, get the rigs out and snare another one. You'll notice as well when I'm casting that the line is hitting the line clip, and I'm laying the spod on the surface as gently as I possibly can. The worst thing you can do in this situation is have the spod crashing into 5 or 6 feet of water, making a terrible splash and scaring the fish away. So I'm literally just laying it down on the surface. Hits the clip, just lays down as gently as you possibly can. Just give it a couple of flicks just to clear the stuff out the back of it. And in she comes. I'm just going to repeat the process on the right hand long rod, do a couple more on the short rod, and then get the rigs back out there, hopefully to snare another one. So another mistake a lot of people make is they put far too much bait out each time you bait up, and it just takes longer to get another bite. Beautiful. That's the second rod bang on the money. Get me back lead. Down she goes. Both the other rods are clipped up as well, so they're going to get dropped out on the various spots, and that's going to be it for the day until hopefully I get a bite.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa Linear BR Reels.
Welcome back to Thinking Tackle. We're going to talk hardware now. And a major mistake that people make is they choose a venue that's beyond their capabilities and the tackle they've got with them. So the big lake, for example, Jolly, you might need to cast 120 yards. If you can only cast 70 or 80, you may as well not be there. So pick a venue that suits you and the kit you're using. So to talk you through my kit, these are my light rods, believe it or not, my 12-foot 3¼ infinities. I knew I was going to come on one of the smaller lakes, so I brought those with me. And to go with them, I've got my Ento reels filled with 12-pound fluorocarbon, which is not a very good casting line at all. But the good thing about it is it's much harder to see, and it's very, very heavy, so it sinks to the bottom really, really quickly. And on lakes like this, where the fish are swimming around all the time, line is probably the most scary thing for the carp. So if you can get it all down on the bottom, you'll notice that I'm using a flying back lead and a back lead as well, just to try and keep everything as close to the bottom as possible. So these fish can drift around in this area, not come into contact with a line, and hopefully feed. And then moving down onto the bobbins, we've got a very, very lightweight bobbin there, as light as I can possibly get. And that's another mistake a lot of people make. They have the bobbins right up at the top, they have their rods high in the air, you can see the lines going out, they're probably hitting the surface 20 yards out where the water's so shallow. That must be so easy for the fish to see that. As soon as they know there's an angler in that area, they're going to stop feeding and move off somewhere else. In stark contrast to it, with the back lead and the flying back lead and the very light bobbin, literally from the rod tip out to where I'm fishing, that line is almost on the bottom. and that's so completely different from how most people normally fish. That's why I can get bites in the day and a lot of people don't. While we're on the subject of line, it's something that people always run out of when on these kind of holidays. I've done it myself, never again. I always take loads of spare spools because you can end up cracking off, or the line gets cut and you lose 50, 60, maybe 100 yards of line, and then the spool's low and you can't hit the mark. Also on these particular venues there's lots of little crayfish in here, and you'll find every now and again you'll be winding in and there'll be one hanging on the line. And what I do is wind the line back through my fingers just to see if there's any nicks in it from the crayfish's claws. If there is, I strip that line off and start again, because the last thing you want to do is pull into a really big fish, crayfish has bitten the line a little bit, weakened it, and the line ends up snapping. So you can never pay too much attention to it. Something I do as a matter of course in any session that I'm fishing is always mark the line with a piece of tape. So once I'm out to the area that I want to be, I fold a little bit of electrical tape around the line and mark the distance. So when I'm recasting, I'm always dropping the rigs back on the same spot. And to keep disturbance down to an absolute minimum, what I've done when I've found me areas with a marker float, I've wound the marker float down to the bottom, got the rod roughly where I would finish a cast, so sort of pointing up at 45 degrees, and put the line under the line clip, wound the float in, and then walked it out on the grass behind my swim and walked one of the lines out with it with the lead on the end, and dropped the lead right next to the marker float, come back, tightened up a little bit, put the line under the clip on the reel, and then walked it down and wound it on nice and tightly. So that line is then marked at exactly the distance where the marker float was, where the spod was dropping the bait, and then one cast, bang, straight out onto the spot, rather than casting at the marker float 3 or 4 times to get it right, perhaps catching up on the marker float and having to drag the whole lot in, because we all do it. I've done it a million times myself. So it's cutting the casting down to an absolute minimum, and also cutting the disturbance down to a minimum in the swim as well. And once I've finished using that marker float, that's it for the week. As soon as I get bites on the spots, I'll just keep putting bait back on that spot, and hopefully build the swim up to get more and more takes. So that's hardware dealt with. The most important thing to remember is fish to the capabilities of your tackle and your own experience. Now, Ali's fishing on Nerf Lake, and he's been getting quite a few bites with his own unique baiting approach. So we're going to go over there now and see what he's up to.
Firstly, I'm going to take you through the swim I'm in, because it's really important on these trips to fish to your strengths. And this season I've been fishing a sort of intimate little English syndicate, and I didn't want to come away to France and pick Jolly, the big lake, and have to fish at 130 yards, because I've not been doing that this year, and I'll leave that to the big guns like Damien and Danny and people like that. But on this particular trip, the lake is really suited to my type of fishing. It's uncannily similar, the swim, to the lake I'm on in England. You got big area of snags off an island, it just screams carp, and then I've got a nice big body of open water in front of me, and it comes to another small island. And that to me just screams carp, whether the wind's banging over the other side or whether it's coming into me. It just looks like a holding area, and that's a really encouraging thing to look for. And when the draw was made, this was my top choice of swim. This is where I wanted to be. My whole head was framed around getting in here. So when the draw came out, I came out quite high and I was able to get in here. So I was really happy and excited. And so far, the session's gone really well. So I mean, you can have a look. I've got basically a rod just to the left of them snags over there. My middle rod is positioned off the slope of the island, which is just in front of me there. It drops off from sort of 3.5 foot down to 4 foot, and I've got it right on the pinnacle there. There's a bright tree where it's sort of starting to go wintry, into its wintry colours. I've got a bait there, and then the other one is off the left of this island. Again, it slopes off from 3 to 4 and then plateaus out at 5. And my left-hand rod's bang on that, and all spots I'm really happy with. At the moment, my runs have been coming to the left and middle rod, but I'll tell you a bit more about the baiting strategy, because I'm going to get some bait in now. Now, baiting approach is really important on these little lakes. A lot of people come away and think small lake, small spreader bait, small amount of bait. Now, I'm not saying go mad and like piling loads of bait when you get here, but what I like to do is spread the bait around. I've got this big area of open water in front of me, and what I do every morning, sort of about just before breakfast, my rods will be wound in, whether there's fish in me swim or not. I know it sounds crazy, but it will benefit you as your session progresses by keeping your lines out of the water and putting bait out. Then fish find an area on the lake which is free of lines, free of pressure, free of hooks, free of danger, and they build up in confidence as the week progresses. They're coming in, they're grazing, and that's what I'm doing. I'm putting 4 baits in a throwing stick, which is quite rare, and literally just throwing them out there. Just not any old wear, but certainly over a nice big 20, 30 yard square the bait's going out. And it's just my way of saying to the carp, if you want a free feed in the day, come here. I'm not going to fish for you, but at night I definitely will. And as you can see, that's a 10 kilo tube of boilies, and by sort of baiting little and often, twice a day, I'm keeping the bait going in. It's trickling in, and there's no lines there. The carp are getting used to coming here and feeding. Now, I'm not doing this on all three of my rods. I've got another little spot which has also been productive with a little spread of particles. I'll show you how I'm doing that, but that is the boilie approach. It's a nice wide area. I'm just putting the bait in every day, on time, and the fish are just coming in there grazing, and at night I'm picking them off. It's a lovely way of fishing, a very comfortable way of fishing, and what it means, you don't have to be pinpoint accurate. You don't have to be landing a foot to the side of the marker, because the carp are looking for boilies. They're moving, they're picking baits up, and that is really important. It makes them a lot easier to catch as well, because the faster you get a carp moving, the quicker they're hitting the lead, and that is really important. And I think, you know, the more boilie fishing I do, the more I enjoy it, and you know, by putting them out there, it's making it very easy. And you know, I've already had some really lovely big common carp off there, and hopefully there'll be a few more to come. So I'll show you this particle spot, and I'm just going to get some more bait out. Like I said, I haven't put all my eggs in one basket, and I've got a lovely little particle spot going there to the left of the island, as I described earlier. Now, one of the reasons was I wanted to try out a new toy. It's a mini Skyliner, and for a small lake like this, it's absolutely perfect. No front vanes, it doesn't get caught in the wind. And the other perfect thing about it is, because it's so small, when you come to baiting up after a fish at night, it's just a little dimple on the surface. It's like a little plop every time you cast out. And that gives me a lot of confidence. On shallow lakes like this, on a lot of occasions I'd be scared to bait up with a bigger spot, but with this little one it's absolutely perfect. And I'd suggest that to you. If you're fishing a lake and you're putting out a bulk amount of bait with a big spot in the day, then why not change to a smaller one at night when you come to just topping up your swim? And Adam Penning told me that 10 of these is 14 ounces of hemp. So I've already had 2 carp off 10 of these, so that's 14 ounces of hemp for 2 carp, which ain't bad really. So I'm just going to top this up. It's only about sort of midday, so I'm going to put 10 spods out now on my spot to the left of the island, and then just after dinner, when I get my rigs out, I'll put another 10 spods on top of that, and probably a light scattering of small 12mm boilies, just to keep them rooting around for a few bigger things, so they're used to picking up a hook bait. Lovely. Got another one in the net.
I have indeed, yeah.
Cheeky monkey. Where have you had that then?
Just the left-hand side of that right-hand island there, look.
They've been showing, haven't they, last hour or so?
They have been, yeah, just behind that island they have been, yeah. I was fishing up earlier on, just in front of this one here.
Right, I see. What, are they back of the wind now, do you reckon? Have they moved a bit?
Yeah, they seem to be, yeah.
What have you been having them on then?
Just little boilies. Yeah? Just sticking loads of baits out everywhere and fishing 2 bait stringers wherever I think I'll pick a bite up from.
Really? How much bait?
I've been putting about 1 kilo to 2 kilos a day. So nearly 5-6 kilos now on the 3rd day.
Yeah? Different sizes? One size?
15s and 80mm.
Right. Do you think that's making any difference?
Yeah, it can do, can't it? Because they're picking up different baits, but I think when you're sort of getting them moving anyway, it doesn't really matter.
And then what about the hook bait? Is it straight bottom bait, pop up?
It is just straight bottom bait, or wafter, yeah. No, I'm just drilling it out, putting a little bit of cork in it just to take the weight off the hook. It's not slow sinking, but just so it goes up the same as all the others.
Quality. And what about the rig? What's sort of the terminal setup?
Just a safe zone leader, lead on a lead clip even, and then I'm just changing the size of sort of the length of my rigs to where I'm putting the baits. If it's softer, I'll put it longer. Why'd you do that then? Oh, right, go on. Yeah, because if it's a softer bottom, the lead will go in, and I want the bait to be on top of the silt, obviously. So. Right, got you. And do you foam it up, or you got PVA bags on, or anything like that? Yeah, I've got a PVA bag of 2 or 3 baits, and then I'm just putting a bit of foam over the hook to, so nothing marks the hook when it goes down. Awesome. So you actually caught that short, you didn't carve me up this time? No, not this time. No, you caught an 8 pig. That's nice to see. And the other thing, you promised me you wouldn't cast out in the day while I weren't fishing, and you haven't yet. Well, I saw Harris told me that I was fishing, so I had to come around here and flick a couple of baits out. That's it, I'm going to get that rusty head monkey out of here. That's it. Right, well, should we have a look at him then? Yeah, let's get him out. Right then, dove from above, let's have it up. Right, which number's this? Number 6 now. Not bad, son. You're doing me by 1, aren't you? I am indeed. But you're fishing in the days and I ain't. You have to mention it, didn't you? Only joking, look, lovely French now. So it's an absolutely stunning fish.
I think I'll have a little closer look at your rigs in your bivvy.
Sure.
And hopefully pick your brains a bit more, mate. But that's an absolute stunner.
It is. It's one of the nicest ones of the trip, that, isn't it? For me, anyway.
They are lovely, mate. It's quite rare because they're quite peas in a pod on here, and this one's got a few lovely scales, and yeah, brilliant. A few more to go, mate.
Hopefully, yeah. Let's get them back out there.
Awesome. Well done.
Thank you very much.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa Linear BR Reels.
The bait application that I'm using on this particular venue is designed exactly for this one lake. And the reason for that is there's loads of crayfish in here, and crayfish absolutely love boilies. So I've avoided boilies like the plague. And I think that's really, really good because a lot of people come on here and just use boilies. So I'm being different and I'm giving fish food that they don't normally see. And as part of this, we're going to show you that all important secret bait that I've got the bites on. But first of all, we're going to go through my spod mix. We're going to start off with the old faithful chili hemp. One of those goes into it. Carp absolutely love spicy things, and that stuff really, really is spicy. And then with that, we're going to put some party mix, which has got loads of different particles in it. It's got maize and stuff and maples and that in there, which you can also use as hook baits. That's a good little tip if you're, get that out of there. If you're fishing waters where there's lots of crays, they don't seem to like what we call vegetable food. So maize, maples, the stuff I'm going to show you later, they don't seem to like that as much. So if you've got that on the hair, that's going to stop you getting problems with the crays. Right, now onto that, I'm going to add a load of just normal salt that you just buy out the supermarket. Put it on your dinner, it tastes better. Put it on your bait, it tastes better. And you can't actually put salt into your hemp so much when you're cooking it because it stops it from splitting. So if you put it on afterwards, it just gives it a much nicer flavour. It still means it's going to split if you are going to cook it. Now obviously I'm using stuff in the jars. That's great from a holiday point of view because it doesn't go off during the week. Every jar's sealed so it will stay fresh as long as you need it to. I just leave some in the back of my van all the time when I'm fishing. Oh, look at that. That looks carpy already. Pucker. Now to this I'm going to add a couple of tins of tuna, just tuna in brine, again just straight from the supermarket. The cheapest one is actually the best one because there's loads of brine and not as much nice tuna in it, and it's that, again, that salty fishy sort of smell and flavour that they love. Now this stuff will attract the crayfish, and if you've got something on the end like a tuna boilie, then that's going to get mullered in no time. So I'm putting this in for attraction into the swim, but I'm not going to fish anything like it on the end because I know I'll be asking for trouble. So you can end up with a situation where you've got loads of little crayfish feeding on this tuna amongst the baited spot, which is also going to be attractive to the carp. And if you've got a hook bait on that they don't like, that's going to sit out there until the carp come along. Let's get that out of the way. Get in and get messy. So just flake all that up. And then to that, a couple of tins of sweet corn. I'm using one from a fishing firm, but you can use the value stuff straight out of the supermarket. A couple of tins of that as well. Carp absolutely love that, and that gives me the option to use plastic corn as a hook bait or a piece of maize as a hook bait over the top, because we've noticed that the fish tend to pick out those little bits of yellow in the mix. So if you've got a bit of yellow on the end, that can often get you bites before they've eaten the rest of the bait. And now for the magic ingredient. This is the best bit about catching these big fish this morning, was catching it on a bait that's probably never been used here before. And that's it, chickpeas. Absolutely fantastic bait. I haven't used these for probably 15 years in my carp fishing. Just totally neglected, and the reason I'm using them, we used to use tiger nuts on this venue, but they got banned, and the reason for that is people overuse them, and as a large part of the fish's diet, tiger nuts are actually bad for the fish. If you only put a few in, it's no problem at all, but if everyone uses nuts, the fish tend to lose weight. So by going over to this, it's still vegetable food, so it's still similar to a tiger nut. It's not a boilie, and what I've done with these is I've cooked them on the bank, I've soaked them up, and then cooked them in that lovely pot that I just bought in a French supermarket for a few quid. cooked them up on the bank, soaked them for 24 hours, and I've cooked them in curry paste. Just got the old curry paste that you'd normally make a curry with. Half of that paste went in there, a load of salt as well, and these are like Madras strength. So they are really, really spicy, but really tasty as well. You can put a little bit more salt and a little bit more curry than you would normally use if you were going to eat them yourself. So that does taste a bit salty, but fish absolutely love that. So I'm going to bung a load of those in there as well. And after 2 days of catching nothing, putting these on was, as Mr. Meady calls it, unlocking the code. And it's so nice to catch a fish on a hook bait that no one else has probably ever used on here. Now, as this spod mix, you're going to lose a little tiny bit out the back of the spod when you cast. So I'm going to stodge it up a little bit. I normally do that with chopped boilie, but because we're not using any boilie in the mix, because the crayfish are just going to eat them, I'm going to add a little bit of tiger nut method mix or ground bait. This is ground up tiger nuts and loads of other bits. This is allowed because it's not an actual tiger nut itself. And it's very milky and nutty, clouds the water up as well, and the fish absolutely love it in its own right. So I've got loads and loads of different carpy bits in there. And in my session I basically started off with 8 spods on my long area, 4 or 5 spods on my short area, not too much bait at all because there's not so many fish in here, and I don't want to put a load in and it be days and days and days before I get a bite. Didn't have anything that whole first 24 hours, so I only put 4 in the next night and 2 over the short rods. And then last night, because the weather had changed and we had a southwesterly wind and it was overcast, looking really good, I thought the fish have got to feed. So I put another 10 spodfuls in last night, and this morning I got the 2 bites over the top of that. So this evening I'm probably going to put another 10 or 15 spodfuls in, build up the area again, and hopefully get some bites in the morning. So now we've looked at the spod mix, I'm going to show you how I'm fishing over the top of it, because I'm using some little PVA tricks that most people probably won't be using. I'm using 3 different PVA mixes. The first one is my vegetable food mix, which is that fella. It's just basically some of that same tiger nut method mix that I'm putting in my spod mix to stodge it up a little bit, with just some of the hemp and the party mix in it. So not obviously nowhere near as much as what I would put in my spod mix. So it's more ground bait than it is particle, and that's just ended up as a nice sort of, if I squeeze that together, a nice sort of moist mix. It's not too wet to melt the PVA, but at the same time it's not so dry that it all floats up. So I'm going to knock up a stick of that now, because I've got to recast my rods after dinner. A mistake a lot of people make is they try and scoop it up and pour it into the end there. If you just, with the side of the tub, just scoop that up so you get a couple of inches inside the tube, and then with your compressor stick just literally push that down, push it really hard into the end there with your thumb over the end to compress it, and then just push that out to form your stick. Take your compressor out of the way, plenty of PVA off, and then just tie in a simple overhand knot and hold the top of the stick and actually pull it down onto the top of the stick like that, so the stick's nice and tight, and then do a second overhand knot so the 2 are fairly close together and cut off like that. That's my PVA stick. I've got 2 different types of that. Like I say, this is the vegetable one, and then my sort of fishy, a sort of pellety one is that one. That's got some bloodworm pellets in it, and then some tuna as well, same tuna as I'm putting in my spod mix, and then a bit of bloodworm ground bait as well. If I was going to fish one of my favourite bloodworm dumbbells, which I have tried without success on this venue, then that's the mix that I would use. Really strange, this particular venue, it seems to be vegetable food that works really well. On the big Lake Jolly, this stuff rules. So you need to take a few different options because you don't know what's going to work on your particular lake. And then since I've moved over to the magic curry chickpeas, that's how I've actually doused them up a little bit so that I can still get them into a PVA bag, because obviously they're wet straight out of the juice that they're in. So I've just covered them with a little tiny bit of that tiger nut method mix there, just to take the wetness off the surface of them. And then I'm actually going to use the slightly larger funnel web that's also got its own compressor with it. This is the boilie size, and I'm just going to pour probably half a dozen there, maybe 10 of those down the end of the tube. Let's get all that stuff out of the way. Just use the compressor so you end up with a nice tight bag so you don't use too much PVA. Give myself a little bit of slack there. So I end up with a little bag of chickpeas. and I'll just fish that hooked on. The other one I actually slide down the hook link and fish it with a hook inside it. This one I'll just hook on, PVA up the hair a little bit so that that doesn't tangle on the cast. And with that I'm going to end up with a nice little pile of chickpeas right round the hook bait, which will hopefully generate a bite for me tonight.
Look at that, absolute beastie. 44 pounds, 12 ounce of common carp. The tactics are kicking into gear now, and it's early on the third night. I'm going to slip this one back, get the rig out there, because in Lake Nerth there's still bigger commons than this, but I'm absolutely ecstatic. It just doesn't get any better. Brilliant, really made up with this one.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa Linear BR Reels.
Welcome back to Thinking Tackle. As you can see, I'm donning these fantastic chest waders, which I look delicious in. The reason being, I've just had to put a very big fish into the edge there for a moment while we do some filming. I just want to talk you through a little tip that I've done. A bite obviously came on this left-hand rod, which has not been cast back out again. And the reason I haven't done that is all three rods are fished at exactly the same range out there. It's 82 turns of that reel. I've walked them all out on the bank, remember, to cut down on the disturbance. If I recast that rod back onto that spot, it's probably going to ruin my chances of getting a bite on these other two. So I've left that out of the water for the morning feeding spell. I will put it back out again this afternoon, but because those two are exactly the same range, on the same baits, on the same baited spot, there's every chance I could get a bite on one of those, where recasting that one might ruin my chances. So we're going to leave them as they are, get the big one out and show you what I've had. How about that? 52 pounds and 2 ounces of magnificent Maison mirror carp. Second time I've made this fella's acquaintance. I caught him in the spring as well when we were doing another project. Oh, and he fought just as hard then as he did this time. A real beast, absolute beast. So we're going to get this fella back and then talk about the all-important rigs, because they are so important on here, because the fish are very pressured and you need to be doing it exactly right to get fellas like this in the net. God, that's heavy. Oh, how about that for a monster? That's the reason we come to these venues, to catch these enormous fish, and I'm sure that if you follow the tips and tactics that we've shown you in the programmes, you'll get amongst these as well. What a beast. What a beast. Thank you, my love. Oh, I'll be quite happy to see you next year. They just look enormous in the water. Absolute submarines. And off she goes. Au revoir, pucker. Just like the bait that I'm using, the rigs that I'm using are designed exactly for this venue as well. And if I talk you through them, this is what I sort of started off on. It's progressed during the session, but I started off on what we're calling the KD rig, which is after Kenny Dorset, the guy that thought of it. And it's basically a normal hair rig, but as I'm tying the knotless knot of it, I do a couple of turns on the knotless knot, and then I fold the hair backwards and carry on turning down the hook. So the hair sort of comes out of the back of the knot rather than the front, which is completely the wrong way round for the mechanics of the rig as I would normally use them. But the thing that changes it all is the hook bait. I've got a semi-buoyant hook bait. That's 2 bits of plastic corn soaked in a fruity flavour, and they're counterbalanced by a number 2 shot there, so the bait is effectively weightless. When you put this rig in your hand and pull it across your hand, it doesn't hook your hand at all. But when you take the bait off it and the shot off the hair as well and pull it across your hand, it hooks every single time. So by taking the weight of the bait away completely, by counterbalancing it, that's exactly how it works in the fish's mouth. And the nice thing is, when it goes in, it sort of drops down and hooks around, and it's very difficult for the fish to deal with. And we've seen that on the underwater films, and the results of all the boys that have been using it. Ali got onto it a long time before any of us and was catching a lot of fish on it. So it's the ideal ideal thing to fish with 2 grains of plastic corn. The main reason I'm using the plastic corn is because of the crayfish. There's absolutely loads in this lake, and I think that's probably responsible for the fact that the fish are so big in here, because a lot of their diet is crayfish. So with that on there, you know it's going to be on there 24 hours. If you put a boilie out, it's only lasting 3 or 4 hours at best. Sometimes it's gone within an hour. So there's no point having boilies on all night long, winding the next morning to no bait. So by having plastic on, you at least know something's going to be there. And you remember I'm putting a lot of corn into my spod mix, so that's sitting over the top is just another little bit of yellow, nice little fruity flavour to draw them in, and boom, hopefully we'll get a bite. And the other thing that I started with, this next one down, is my standard hair rig. I've just tied that on with my favourite whipping knot there. That's underneath the shrink tube. Little tiny bit of the coloured shrink tube, that's in the safe zone colours to camouflage the hook a little bit, just curving in just to help that hook flip over and catch hold. And then the rig ring as I normally favour. And then on the hair, I've got one of my favourite bloodworm dumbbells, again tipped off with a bit of plastic corn. And this comes from a session I did here in September. I fished a big Lake Jolly, but there were guys fishing on here and the crays were an absolute nightmare. And they found the only way to get round it was to cover their hook bait with some shrink tube. This stuff's called Wrap-It. And what you basically do, you just put a needle into the bait, put some of this Wrap-It round it, push it into the steam, and the Wrap-It will shrink down like a normal bit of shrink tube will, and it forms like a plastic coating around the bait. So the only bits the crayfish can get into is this bottom bit and the top bit. And by tipping it off with a bit of plastic corn, and on the end there, I don't know if you can see, I've got an extender stop that's actually pulled into the plastic corn, so there's no way they can pull that hair off the end and get any of the bait off, because that's another one of their little tricks. So that's really, really secure on there. There's no way that's going to come off. Now that's how I started the session, and you remember from the bait section, I wanted something to not imitate a tiger nut, but something of vegetable nature that the crays wouldn't like, that was different from what anybody else was using. And that next one down illustrates how I was fishing it. There's 2 chickpeas on there, the curried chickpeas that I cooked on the bank, and they're fished exactly the same as the rig before. Again, I've got a size 6 wide gate B, a curved pointed hook. When that curves in, it's much more difficult to come out, so that's why we use them barbless, because they're that little bit more secure. The same rig ring that I've tied on there, the same whipping knot that I favour underneath the shrink tube, and again that's going to flip over and catch hold in the fish's bottom lip. And it's funny, when I put that hook bait on the same rig that I normally use, that was the only one out there with a chickpea on it, and that produced the bite. When I got the fish in, I obviously cast that rod back out again. I wound one of the other rods in that had the plastic on, put 2 chickpeas on that, cast that one out, and that's how I got the second bite. So if one hook bait starts to work, then put all the rods onto that hook bait, because you know the fish are eating it at that time. And then the last hooking arrangement I've got here was what I got my second bite on. Very, very similar to the one I used with the ring on it. But what I've done there is I've tied a soft hair just onto the bend of the hook, just the original hair rig style. And what that does is it makes the point of the hook very, very heavy. So when it goes in the fish's mouth, it turns over and catches hold really quickly. I've still got a bit of shrink tube on there, so it turns over aggressively. So it turns just that little bit quicker than a normal rig, and that proved very, very effective. Now, all these rigs are tied in a new hook link material called Hybrid Soft. Similar to the original hybrid, but we've changed the colours a little bit to make it even better camouflage. And this soft stuff, you don't have to steam it or anything to get it straight. You can just tie a standard knot in it. If we look at the link loop on the end of the hook link there, I've just tied a 4 or 5 turn half blood knot, wet it and just pulled it down neatly, and it forms a lovely little knot right on the end. It just shrinks down perfectly, retains its knot strength, and is very, very easy to tie. And that means that if there's any contours on the lake bed out there, that hybrid soft would pick up the contours of the lake bed and not be sticking up straight like the stiff one can do. So I reserve really the stiff one for if I'm fishing on hard gravel. And we found on this particular lake, those softer bits of sand seem to produce the bites from the bigger fish. So that's what I've targeted. So that's the hook links. Let's have a look at the lead systems. And this is the lead system I've been using to very good effect. It's my version of a lead clip. It's not designed to eject the lead at all. Remember when we fished at Abbey, we had very weedy conditions and we needed to get rid of that lead as quickly as possible. Completely different here. There's not a drop of weed in this lake, so we can use a lead clip, still very good for anti-tangle, but turn it into a running rig almost instantly. And the way I've done that is I've cut the ring swivel off the end of the safe zone leader, and I've replaced it with a quick link. And I've squeezed, if you can see there, I've squeezed the lead clip slightly to make it oval, and when I pull that quick link into there, it goes in under just the tiniest amount of tension. It won't pull in any further than that, doesn't matter how hard I cast. And then when we get a bite, that will actually pull out of there really, really easily. And then basically the safe zone leader is then pulling through the lead clip. So what it means in a fishing situation, when the fish picks up the rig, feels the weight of the lead, generally they shake their head to try and get rid of the hook. Now normally that lead, if it's semi-fixed, will swing backwards and forwards underneath their chin, and sometimes it can actually swing the hook out of their mouth. With this, the more they shake their head, the lead is just sliding away from the fish, the more movement it does, and I think that startles them, just, you know, like a running inline or the shocker rig. The fish don't know how to deal with it. It slides further and further away from them. They think, right, I've got to go, and off they run. And it's no coincidence that all 3 bites I've had have been very good bites. And I think that's when you startle the fish, that's when they panic and run. And on these particular venues, they get a lot of funny bites. And I think that's where you fish in a semi-fixed rig, the fish pick it up, they use the weight of the lead and think, right, I'm not going anywhere. This has happened to me plenty of times before. I'm going to try and get rid of this. And quite a few people have had the bobbin pull up a couple of inches and stay there. And they've looked at it for a while and hit it and the fish has been on. That's not happened to me in this situation. I've just got blinding runs, which I think means you've startled the fish. So just to show you how the hook link's attached, I will attach one of my amazing chickpea setups that I will be using on a lot more venues. I'm just literally clipping that on, pulling it back down. So that is the, oh, that hook is sharp. That is the setup. If I just hold that up for you, that is the setup that's been going out there and doing the business for me. I've got a bit of putty on the hook link just to hold it all flat to the bottom and help drag that hook home just a little bit better. And if we go down the leader, you can see I've got a little 4mm rubber bead on there. That could be used as a backstop, but what I do is I use it to stop the lead actually coming off the end of the leader on the take, because if it does that, it will slide back down the line on the fight and end up right at the end of the leader, and it's almost like playing a fish on a zig rig. The hook link's gone from sort of 4 inches long to sort of 2.5 feet long, and it just feels weird when you're playing a fish. If the line snaps, no problem, the lead will push that bead off and the fish can get away, no problem at all, but it just stops it feeling funny when you're actually playing a fish. And one little tip, every time I've wound in here, the hook has been blunt. Whether I've had a fish or not, the hook has gone blunt. And I think that's a combination of the fact that the crayfish are moving the rigs around and blunting the hook on the bottom. And also it seems to be either the acidity of the water or the alkaline nature of the water or the mud that it's lining. It's just taking the edge off that point. And what I do when I wind in, I scrape the point along my nail. If it doesn't dig into my nail like it did straight out the packet, I change it. And a lot of people say, oh, that's all right for you, you own the company, you know, you can use as many hooks as you want, it doesn't cost you anything. Well, if you work it out, I've probably used 25 hooks. I've only had 3 bites and I've used 25 hooks in this session, 35p a hook. What's that, a tenner? Something like that. Now, is it worth a tenner to catch a 50-pounder? I think so. So they're the sort of things I think you should pay the most attention to when you're on these difficult waters.
Oh, heavy, very heavy. 43 pounds, 6 ounces of big fat Maison mirror. Awesome. Make sure you tune in to the next show, because we've got some even bigger fish on the way. See you then. Thanks for watching.
For a chance to see more of the underwater footage shown in this series, check out the state-of-the-art underwater carp fishing series, available from all good tackle shops.
This episode of Thinking Tackle is in association with Daiwa Linear BR Reels.